I wasn't snooping, at least not at first. It started with something mundane. I was looking for a backup credit card. The one Jessica used to carry in her old leather clutch. It was a soft black thing with a little gold zipper, barely big enough for a phone and a lipstick. I hadn't seen her use it in months, maybe even a year. But we were packing for a weekend up in the San Juans, and I remembered she sometimes stashed emergency cards in her lesser-used bags. I thought it might still be in there, forgotten. I found the purse in the back of her closet, behind a pile of scarves and shoes she never wore. It was dusty, one of those little details you don't think about until it's staring you in the face. Dust means time. Dust means disuse. So, when I unzipped it, I didn't expect to find anything relevant. Just receipts, a crumpled tissue, maybe an old lip balm. And there it was, a folded piece of paper, tucked into the inner zippered compartment. It looked out of place, crisp, clean, barely creased. It didn't match the cluttered vibe of the rest of the bag. Something about it felt intentional. I unfolded it. It was a receipt from a boutique wine shop. One of those places where you don't pick the bottle based on price, you pick it based on pedigree. The kind of place with a marble counter, whispering staff, and a tasting lounge in the back. Total, $480. Date, 2 months ago. Location, New York, New York. Name is Blake. Delivery address, some high-rise on the Upper West Side. My stomach dropped. Jessica hadn't been to New York in over 3 years. Not that I remembered, anyway. And if she had, it certainly wasn't in the past few months. Her calendar had been full of local meetings and weekend getaways with girlfriends. At least that's what she'd told me. And the day the receipt was dated? I remembered it. She'd said she was spending the afternoon with her friend Rachel, just hanging out, grabbing lunch in Fremont. She'd come home around 7 p.m., smelling faintly of wine and eucalyptus hand lotion. I didn't say anything right away. I closed the purse, put the receipt in my back pocket, and went on with packing. But the whole time my mind raced. I wanted to believe there was some harmless explanation. Maybe it was for work. Maybe someone else had used her name. Maybe she'd bought it as a gift and forgot to mention it. But that name, Blake, didn't belong anywhere in her world. Not in her contacts, not on her social media, not in our mutual circles. And the calmness of her movements, the way she floated back into our kitchen that night 2 months ago, cracking open a bottle of Merlot like it was any other evening, that haunted me now. Later that evening, I brought it up. I made it casual, or at least I tried to. "Hey, weird question," I said, handing her the receipt. "I was digging around in your old clutch for that backup visa and found this. What's this about?" She looked at it for barely a second. Didn't even flinch. "Oh," she said, her voice smooth, almost dismissive. "That's from a client thing. We sent a bottle to one of the big guys at Franklin and Rhodes' New York office. Simon Blake. He's one of the senior partners there. Simon Blake." This Blake. Fit, but too well. She spoke like someone giving a rehearsed answer. Not flustered, not surprised. Just prepared. And Jessica, for all her strengths, had never been good at improvising. I used to tease her about it, how her fibs were always so easy to catch. Like the time she said she was stuck in traffic when really she was still getting dressed. She'd confess 10 minutes later, cheeks flushed. That was years ago, back when lies were cute and harmless. But now she was flawless. And that scared the hell out of me. Because nobody becomes perfect at lying overnight. Takes time, mistakes, practice, a whole separate reality you keep refining until it's airtight. After that conversation, I went upstairs and sat on the edge of our bed. I stared at the wall for longer than I care to admit. It wasn't about the wine. It wasn't even about the money. It was about the quiet confidence in her voice. The way she answered without needing a second to think. The way she looked me dead in the eye and smiled afterward, as if nothing had shifted, as if we were still the same. I didn't bring it up again. She moved on like it was resolved, and I let her. But that night, while she showered, I opened her laptop. I wasn't proud of it. I know how that sounds. But I wasn't digging for dirt. I was looking for peace of mind. for something that would explain it away. Something that would prove I was overthinking. Her recent tabs were boring, spreadsheet templates, an article about sleep cycles, a Pinterest board labeled Summer Garden. I dug through her email next, expecting to feel ashamed, but all I felt was dread. She'd recently changed her passwords, even for the joint ones we'd always shared. That wasn't normal. We never kept secrets like that. Not until recently. And now, standing in the middle of our bedroom holding a wine receipt from a city she wasn't supposed to have been in, I felt like I was staring at the first loose thread in a sweater I no longer recognized. I didn't pull it yet. I wasn't ready. Instead, I folded the receipt and put it in the drawer beside my bed. It sat next to old photos, a broken watch, and the vows we'd written ourselves 7 years ago. All those little relics of permanence. Things we thought would never change. But maybe I'd missed the signs. Maybe I'd mistaken comfort for connection, or routine for trust. I lay in bed that night beside her, listening to the rhythm of her breath as she drifted off. Same as always. But now it felt different. I studied the shape of her shoulders, the way she tucked her hand under the pillow. She looked peaceful, untouched by doubt. But me? I didn't sleep. Instead, I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how long I'd been living in someone else's version of the truth. And that was the night I stopped assuming I knew her at all. After that night, something inside me shifted. I didn't confront her again. I didn't accuse or pry. I just observed. Quietly. Carefully. Like I was studying a stranger wearing my wife's face. And once I started paying attention, things that once seemed harmless or maybe just forgettable began to rearrange themselves into something darker. Something deliberate. It began with a memory. A few months back, I remembered Jessica saying she needed to head into the city more often. Just errands, she said, and the office is trying this hybrid model. But she hates traffic. Always has. She'd complain about even a 30-minute drive across the bridge. So why was she suddenly fine spending hours downtown? Why did she start dressing up on Tuesdays and Thursdays like it was date night when she claimed she was just running to meetings or returning packages? At first, I chalked it up to a mid-career glow-up. She'd started a new skincare routine, bought a few more blazers, joined a new gym. I even told her she looked amazing. I meant it. I thought maybe she was feeling more confident, maybe more herself. But now in hindsight it looked different. Like she was preparing herself for someone else's gaze. One night, not long after the wine receipt discovery, she came home late, later than usual. I was already in bed, pretending to sleep. I heard her key in the lock, heard the door open and shut with that careful, almost guilty softness. She tiptoed through the kitchen. No lights flipped on. I heard the fridge open, then close. No dishes. Just silence. Then she came upstairs. She didn't come to the bed right away. I heard the soft creak of the guest bathroom door. Water running. Maybe she was washing something off. Her face? Her perfume? I don't know. But she climbed into bed 20 minutes later and her hair was damp. Her skin smelled faintly of soap and something else, something floral and expensive. Not her usual scent. I kept my eyes closed. My breathing steady. She lay next to me and didn't reach out. No good night. No nothing. Just a shared bed, a shared silence. The next morning, she said she'd been at a coworker's birthday dinner. We went for drinks after, she said, brushing her hair into a low bun. Didn't realize how late it got. I didn't question it. But the thing was, she didn't say whose birthday. No name. No photos. No leftover cake in a to-go box like she usually brought home. Just words. Empty and floating. It became a pattern. She stopped offering details unless I asked, and even then her answers felt preloaded. Short, clean, nothing messy or contradictory. That used to be how I knew she was telling the truth, when she stumbled, when she forgot things, when she got distracted mid-story. That was real. This new version of her? She was too careful, too edited. She'd also started skipping family dinners. Her reason was always work, deadlines, late calls with East Coast clients, emergency emails. Her job had always been demanding, but she used to fight for time with our nieces, our parents, Sunday brunches. Now it was like those moments were background noise. Something she could mute. And the most damning part? I stopped feeling like her husband. I felt like an obligation. A presence she tolerated when it fit the schedule. I remember one night, sitting across from her at our dinner table, a plate of lemon chicken between us. I asked her what she'd been working on lately. Just making conversation. And she blinked like she hadn't expected the question. Then she smiled and said, "Oh, just the usual. You know how it is." But I didn't. I didn't know how it was. I didn't even know who her team lead was anymore. She used to come home ranting about every meeting, every weird client email, every coworker who microwaved fish in the office. I used to know her schedule better than my own. Yeah? She barely spoke about work. Or anything, really. So I started writing things down. Not because I wanted to trap her, but because I needed to see it. To confirm I wasn't just spiraling. Every time she gave me a new detail, a name, a location, a timeline, I logged it. When she said she was meeting Rachel in Capitol Hill, I marked the time and the date. When she claimed she had a work mixer in Belltown, I jotted it down. And every so often I checked her location history. It wasn't even on purpose at first. A few weeks back, she'd asked me to help set up a lost device alert on her phone. We'd accidentally turned on GPS tracking and she never disabled it. I hadn't paid attention to it before. I respected her space. But now? Now it felt like the only thread of truth I had. That's when things really started to fall apart. Because the GPS logs didn't match her stories. Not even close. On a Thursday, she said she was at her friend Beth's place in Queen and her location history showed her parked for 2 hours in a neighborhood out near Mercer Island, residential, quiet, no shops, no offices. Just homes. Big ones. Another night, she said she was staying late at work to finish a pitch deck. Her phone showed her bouncing around Pioneer Square, then settling near a waterfront condo complex for the rest of the evening. There was no office there. No co-working space. Just luxury condos and sunset views. And then there was the bouquet. About 6 weeks ago, she came home holding a gorgeous arrangement, peonies, ranunculus, those wispy eucalyptus sprigs. I asked who it was from and she smiled and said, coworkers. Just a little appreciation thing. She kissed my cheek, placed the bouquet in the center of the dining table, and didn't mention it again. But it nagged at me. The card attached had no names. Just a typed note, you make things brighter. S. S. Like the wine receipt. Like S. Blake. I asked once, casually, who S was. She laughed and said, no clue. Maybe a team assistant? Could be anyone. Anyone. That word stuck with me. I started scrolling through her social media, something I hadn't done in years. Not because I was suspicious back then, but because I trusted her. But now I was looking for clues. Tags? Mentions? Comments? Nothing. Her digital life was polished. Impeccable. Pictures of sunsets, smoothie bowls, book recommendations. But nothing personal. No selfies. No couple photos. No date night with hubby or anniversary throwbacks. We'd been married 7 years, and if someone landed on her page today, they wouldn't know I existed. And somehow I hadn't noticed that before. That's the thing about slow changes. They slip under the radar until suddenly they're undeniable. It was like she had been erasing me in real time, one quiet decision at a time. No fight. No dramatic exit. Just a slow fade out. Like I was part of an old chapter she'd quietly stopped rereading. I stopped sleeping well. Every sound at night made me sit up. Every quiet moment in the house echoed too loud. And yet she acted normal. Made jokes over dinner. Folded laundry while humming to herself. Kissed my cheek when she left for the day. And every one of those small gestures made it worse. Because they felt like cover. Like she was performing a role I no longer had a script for. The only genuine thing I felt from her anymore was distance. Cold, calculated, and widening by the day. And still, I hadn't confronted her. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me hoped I was wrong. That I was just connecting dots that didn't belong together. That I was letting fear write a story my heart wasn't ready to read. But deep down I knew. The woman sleeping next to me wasn't the same woman I married. Or maybe she was, and I was just now realizing how much of her I'd never really known. It all came to a head on a Friday. I remember because it rained that day, the kind of steady Seattle drizzle that seeps into your bones and makes the whole city feel like it's holding its breath. Jessica had mentioned the dinner earlier in the week. A client's in from Chicago, she said, stirring her tea, not quite looking at me. Important guy. They want FaceTime, so I'll be out late. Don't wait up. I nodded like it was nothing. But inside I was already bracing. By then I had stopped pretending I didn't care. I cared too much. But caring didn't mean confronting, not yet. I was still collecting. Still confirming that the story unraveling in front of me wasn't some paranoid hallucination. So when Friday came, I played it cool. Told her she looked nice. She did. Stunning even. She wore a navy dress I didn't recognize, probably new, and a silk wrap even though it wasn't cold. She kissed me on the cheek like always, but something about the way she lingered felt ceremonial. Like she was saying goodbye to an idea more than a person. She left around 6:30. Said she'd Ubered just in case she had wine. Smart. responsible, believable. I didn't follow her. What I did instead was log into the city's Smart Eye pilot system, part of a municipal project I'd been consulting on for 6 months. It was mostly for public safety and traffic analytics, but there were beta camera feeds from high-traffic intersections and select restaurant districts. Pine Street, where she said she'd be dining, was covered. Just a test zone. No facial recognition, just basic time-stamped footage. Normally, I wouldn't touch it for anything personal. But nothing about this felt normal anymore. I watched the feed, rewind-enabled and clean. At 7:03 p.m. I saw her. Jessica exited a silver cab outside Maison Jardin, a high-end spot known more for ambience than business dinners. She stepped out slowly, checking her phone, adjusting the strap of her bag. Her dress shimmered slightly under the streetlight. 10 minutes later, a man appeared. Tan blazer, tailored. About her age, maybe a little older. He didn't hesitate, just walked up to her like he'd done it 100 times. They didn't shake hands. There was no awkward professional distance. Instead, he leaned in, placed a kiss gently on her temple, and smiled. She smiled back. The real kind. The kind I hadn't seen in months. They walked inside together, side by side. Later footage showed them seated by the window, tucked in a booth for two. No laptops. No paperwork. Just wine, shared dessert, slow laughs. She touched his wrist once when he made a joke. He reached up, tucked her hair behind her ear. Casual. An asterisk, mate. Easy. I don't remember how long I watched. Long enough to feel something unnameable inside me go completely still. I wanted to stop then. To close the browser, go outside, breathe. But I couldn't. I needed the truth in full. And there was one more place I hadn't checked in a while, our shared home tablet. She hadn't used it in ages. It mostly lived on the living room shelf, gathering dust between random chargers and old Christmas cards. But I remembered once she logged into her photo archive from it, back when she was designing a digital album for her mom. I powered it on, thumbed past the parental controls, and checked the gallery. At first, just the usual stuff. Old family vacations. Birthday photos. Us on a beach from 3 years ago. Then, as I scrolled further, I saw a folder. Not hidden. Not labeled suspiciously. Just tucked away under recent imports. Inside, I found photos I didn't recognize. The first one stopped me cold. Jessica was sitting on our kitchen counter, our kitchen. The one I'd painted, the one we'd danced in while making pancakes. She was wearing a man's shirt, too big for her, sleeves rolled. She was barefoot, laughing, her hair tied up loosely. And wrapped around her waist, visible only halfway into the frame, was a hand. Male. Light skin. No ring. Not mine. I stared at it for a long time, like maybe if I looked hard enough, the hand would vanish. That it would somehow be explained away. It wasn't. I kept scrolling. More photos. More angles. Same man, now clearer. Lying with her on our couch, half draped over her shoulder. One of her nuzzling into his chest, eyes closed. One of them drinking wine, red, probably expensive, on our back porch at sunset. All of it recent. You could tell by her haircut, her nail polish, even the wine glasses, new, part of a set I hadn't used yet. There was no denying it. No way to twist it. It wasn't a work fling. It wasn't a dinner with an old friend that got misinterpreted. It was deliberate. Repeated. Comfortable. Betrayal didn't even feel like a strong enough word. And worse? It wasn't the affair that shattered me. It was how at home she looked in those pictures. How unconflicted. Like she'd been living 2 full lives without a single crack in the surface. There were no desperate apologies typed in notes, no screech asterisk TS of conflicted messages, no signs of guilt. Just ease. Her body language soft. Her expression warm. These weren't mistakes. They were choices. Repeated ones. I sat on the couch, tablet resting on my lap, the room dark except for the screen glow. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I thought they would be, but they weren't. Instead, I felt hollow. Like someone had scooped everything out of me and left the shell intact. And for the first time since the receipt in the purse, I didn't feel uncertain anymore. There was no more wondering if I was crazy. No more needing to prove anything to myself. This was it. The point of no return. I stared at the final photo in the batch. Her, mid-laugh, head thrown back slightly, wine glass in hand. His hand was on her thigh. Our patio string lights glowed behind them like little halos. It looked like an ad for happiness. Except it was built on a lie. A lie I'd been living in. Sleeping beside. Making coffee for. I turned off the tablet, placed it carefully on the table, and sat in silence for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. That part of me, the reactive part, was gone. Replaced with something quieter. Heavier. This wasn't something you could unsee. Oh no. It was cemented. And now I had a decision to make. The morning after I found the photos, the world didn't end. That surprised me. I thought something in the air might feel different. That the sun wouldn't rise, or maybe the coffee wouldn't taste the same. But everything functioned like always. The heat clicked on at 6:45. Birds chirped outside the kitchen window. And our dog, Cooper, still wandered in right on schedule, dropping his slobbery toy at my feet like nothing in the world had changed. Except everything had. I got up before Jessica. Quietly. No stomping. No theatrics. Just the creak of our hardwood floor and the steady hum of a man moving through the house on autopilot. I made coffee like I always did, but I didn't drink it. I poured it into her favorite mug, the one with the chipped rim and the quote she loved, "Progress, not perfection." It sat untouched on the counter, the steam curling and fading as minutes passed. I just stared at it. That mug, of all things, broke something in me. Because that quote, so innocent, so aspirational, had once meant something to both of us. It had been our little mantra during the hard years. When work *ked. When my mom got sick. When we had to cancel our Europe trip 3 times. Progress, not perfection. We clung to it like a raft. And now? It felt like the punchline to a joke I hadn't realized she was telling. I took the coffee and poured it down the sink. I didn't rage. I didn't break anything. There was no dramatic scene, no yelling. The truth didn't make me violent. It made me surgical. I started packing. Not my things, hers. I opened her closet and looked at the rows of dresses, shoes, and accessories. So many of them had stories attached. That red dress she wore to my promotion dinner. The scarf I bought her from a street vendor in Portland. The heels she'd worn the first time we met my family. But I didn't let myself linger on those details. I became mechanical. Efficient. I grabbed a suitcase from the garage and started folding. Her favorite sweaters. Her charger. The skincare bottles lined neatly on the vanity. I packed them all, one by one. Everything she'd need and nothing more. Next came the envelope. I printed it the night before. 5 sheets. No explanations. No emotions. Just facts. * TS of the photos. A timestamp from the city camera feed. Her GPS logs overlaid with dates and names she'd claimed to be with. One quote from her email, "Looking forward to Friday, same place?" With the response from S, "Blake, can't wait. Let's make it ours again." It wasn't vindictive. It wasn't theatrical. It was documentation. Evidence, plain and simple. I slipped the papers into the envelope and placed it on top of the suitcase, sealing it with a piece of blue painter's tape, the only kind I could find at the moment. Somehow it felt right. Not permanent. Just enough to hold the truth in place. By 8:15 everything was ready. I sat on the couch and waited. She came downstairs at exactly 9:02 wearing pajama pants and one of my old college hoodies. Her hair was in a messy bun. No makeup. Sleep still clung to her eyes. For a second she looked like the girl I fell in love with. She froze when she saw the suitcase. Then her eyes found the envelope. She didn't speak. I didn't either. I stood, walked past her slowly, and grabbed my coat off the hook by the door. No dramatic pause. No final words. I just walked out of the house we'd built together, feeling both heavy and hollow. Outside, the world moved on. Joggers passed. Cars rolled by. A neighbor waved as she watered her plants. I waved back. Because that's what you do, right? You pretend things are okay until they are. I sat in my car for a while, letting the heat warm the cabin. I didn't drive anywhere in particular. Just away. I parked at a viewpoint overlooking the water and watched the ferries glide across Puget Sound, slow and steady. They looked so peaceful. So certain of their direction. I envied them. Around noon I texted a locksmith. 3 hours later, the locks were changed. I also updated the security system and removed her access from every shared login, Netflix, the mortgage app, even the grocery delivery account. It was petty in some ways, but necessary in others. I needed to reclaim the space. Every pixel of it. I also backed up our joint files, then deleted her profile from the home computer. I didn't go through her emails. I didn't read her journal entries. I didn't need more. What I had was already enough. That night, I slept alone for the first time in 7 years. No weight beside me. No breathing to sink to. Just silence. It was awful. But also relieving. There was no pretending anymore. No guessing. No mental acrobatics to figure out which version of her I was getting that day. Just stillness. She didn't come back that night. She didn't call, didn't text. I don't know if that made it better or worse. Around 2 a.m. I got up and stood in the kitchen, barefoot, staring at the empty spot where her coffee mug used to sit. It was gone now. Packed in the suitcase. I had placed it there myself. Funny how one object can hold so much weight. That stupid chipped mug felt heavier than any betrayal. I leaned against the counter and took a deep breath. The kind you take after being underwater too long. I realized then that I'd been holding mine for months. And now? Now it was time to breathe. The next morning I made a list. I'm not proud of how organized I became, but when everything inside you feels messy, the urge to clean, to sort, to control something, anything takes over. The list included things like change insurance passwords, remove her from emergency contacts, donate the books she brought into the house, replace bedding, cancel anniversary dinner reservation already made, of course it was. Each item was a small exorcism, a way to pull her presence out from the corners of my life. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vengeful. I was methodical. By the end of the week, the house no longer looked like ours. It looked like mine. And I was okay with that. 2 days after I changed the locks, Jessica posted a photo of herself crying. I didn't see it firsthand. I'd already unfollowed her on everything. Removed myself, step by step, like someone peeling off a bandage slowly so the wound beneath could finally breathe. But my friend Marcus sent me a *T. Thought you should see this, his message read. The photo was a close-up. Black and white filter. Her face turned partially away from the camera, a tear trailing down her cheek. Her hair was loose, messy in a way that suggested she wanted it to look accidental. The caption read, "Sometimes you outgrow spaces that no longer recognize your worth. Healing isn't linear, but it is necessary. #strongwomen, #new chapter, #self-love." I stared at it for a while. Not because I missed her, but because I was stunned, almost impressed by how quickly she'd flipped the narrative. Her eyes were red, yeah, but not swollen. Her lips were parted slightly, like she just whispered something profound. It looked raw, emotional, curated. The comments flooded in fast. "You were so brave, Jess. Never let anyone dim your light. He didn't deserve you. I've been there. You're gonna thrive, girl. Take your power back." Onward and upward. All variations of the same applause. And not a single one of them knew a thing. She didn't mention my name. She didn't talk about what happened. To them, I was just a blurry shadow in the background of her self-rediscovery arc, probably the cold, neglectful husband. Emotionally unavailable. Stifling her growth. They filled in the blanks with their own baggage. People love to do that. It makes them feel wiser, like they've unlocked some universal truth. I didn't comment. Didn't message. Didn't try to set the record straight. I just saved the post. Not for revenge. Not to use it against her. Just to remind myself of the difference between perception and reality. Between performance and truth. Because Jessica was always good at that. Performing. Controlling the room. She could walk into a space and make strangers feel like lifelong friends. She had that warmth, charming, magnetic, intoxicating. But underneath it, there was something colder. Sharper. Like she was always one step ahead of everyone in the room, already rewriting the story while the rest of us were still figuring out the plot. I remembered the first time I saw that side of her. We were at a dinner party years ago, back when we still held hands under the table. Someone brought up an old scandal at work. Jessica listened quietly for a while, then offered a perfectly diplomatic take. Everyone nodded in agreement, impressed by her fairness. But later, in the car, she rolled her eyes and called the guy a spineless fraud. I laughed then, thought it was just honesty behind closed doors. But now? Now I wonder how many versions of herself she kept on standby. How many faces she showed to fit the moment. After the photo came more posts. One a day, like clockwork. A latte with foam art shaped like a heart. A photo of her hiking alone on a misty trail. A stack of self-help books with sticky notes peeking out. Quotes in soft pastels. Letting go is loving yourself louder. Rock bottom is the foundation for growth. Stop watering dead things. Each caption came with hashtags: healing, evolution, reclaiming. No one asked questions. No one cared about timelines or context. To them, she was a phoenix rising beautifully from the ashes of a marriage that had clearly been suffocating her. I watched from a distance, like an exiled character in a story that used to belong to me. She was winning the narrative war, and I didn't even want to fight. Because it wasn't about fairness anymore. It was about separation. About finally understanding that the person I'd spent years building a life with was also someone capable of sculpting an entirely new version of herself overnight. I deleted the shared photo albums next. Not out of spite, just necessity. Some of them hurt more than others. Our first trip to Whidbey Island, her in a yellow raincoat, jumping over puddles. Our anniversary dinner where she surprised me with tickets to a jazz show. Lazy Sunday mornings with takeout and messy hair and smiles I used to think were real. I paused on one. She was on the couch, curled into my side, blanket up to her chin. We were watching some documentary about sharks. Her eyes were squinting from laughter. I just made some dumb joke about the narrator's voice. It had felt int asterisk mate. Private. True. I almost didn't delete it. But then I remembered the photo of her in the kitchen, laughing in another man's shirt. And that was enough. Click. Gone. The next week, a mutual friend reached out. He hadn't picked sides yet. Just wanted to check in. I appreciated the gesture, but I could already sense the hesitation in his voice. Like he didn't know how much he was allowed to know. She's saying things were already over for a long time, he said gently. That you guys were more roommates than anything else. I let the silence answer for me. What could I say? That we laughed together last month? That we made plans for the holidays? That I kissed her goodbye every morning, believing we were still in the same book. Even if on different pages? I didn't want to convince anyone. It wasn't my job to fix the story she chose to tell. So I said, I'm fine. Hope she's okay too. And that was that. I started building a new routine. Coffee at the corner shop instead of home. Longer walks with Cooper. More time at work. Less explaining. Less needing to. I didn't deactivate my social accounts immediately, but I stopped posting. I didn't need to prove I was healing or show anyone how well I was doing. I didn't want to be tagged in some performative competition about who moved on better. Jessica kept posting. Brunch with friends. A new haircut. A screensh asterisk T of a playlist called New Era. She didn't block me. Probably wanted me to see it. To know she was flourishing. But I stopped watching. I muted her. Unfollowed the people who echoed her hashtags. Started curating my space like I had my house clean, quiet, mine. One night, weeks later, I opened a blank note on my phone and typed, "You don't owe the world a version of yourself it can applaud. You owe yourself peace." I didn't share it, just left it there. For me. And that's the biggest difference between us, I think. She needed the story to be seen. I just needed it to be over. I didn't announce my departure from her world. I just left it. I deactivated my socials, blocked her number, removed her from shared calendars, password vaults, even the grocery list app. It was like erasing a name from wet cement. Still soft, but drying fast. I didn't respond to mutual friends asking for my side. If they knew me, they didn't need it. If they didn't, I wasn't interested in performing. I donated the decor she picked, tossed the candles she liked, even changed the sheets. Not out of bitterness, but survival. She kept posting. Resilience, rebirth, reinvention. But I wasn't watching anymore. I wasn't part of her audience. A month passed. Then one day she asked to meet. Not to apologize. Just to close the loop. We sat at a cafe. She looked smaller somehow, subdued. She talked, but I mostly listened. When she was done, I slid a single photo across the table. Her on our couch in his shirt. She didn't deny it. She just looked down and nodded. That was enough. Weeks later, I wandered into an art gallery alone. I stood in front of a canvas, just one red streak across gray. A woman beside me didn't speak, didn't move. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. Not victory, not closure, just stillness.